Welcome back, Summoners. It's Nova, and I wanted to cover my tournament experience at the Riftbound Regional Qualifier in Houston that just happened. Go over the top 8 breakdown, the meta overview, conversion rates, and a few other things. Firstly, I wanted to say that I am not covering any of the drama or rumors that have been going on. I simply just don't care enough to comment publicly on it. Whoever's involved will figure it out. That said, let's get into it. I wanted to acknowledge that this weekend had its issues for sure. Metal cards, overnight camping attempts, cosplayers, and media personnel being let in before premium competitors, and purchasing most of the metal card stock before anyone could get in. Inconsistent rulings and card IO being horrendous all weekend. Topdeck GG never went down. Has a mobile app, online decklist submission, and is offering 2-week free trials for you to host your own tournaments and try it out. No strings attached, by the way. All of that said, I talked to probably a dozen different Riot and UVS staff members. No, I'm not going to name drop any. And every single one of them acknowledged the issues, were eager for feedback, and were straight up honest in saying, we recognize the issues, they're going to be fixed. Not once did I get a robotic, we'll look into them, or any, it's our first event, give us some leeway, excuses. Every single one, including some of the highest levels of the Riftbound team, were straight up like, some of this sucks. We're sorry. This isn't the standard. It will get fixed. So that's very, very good, very confidence instilling. We're going to get to the point where we'll have the player experience that we expect. A big complaint for me was the side events registration was absolutely horrendous. Don't want to get into the whole thing, but it was just horrible. Online registration was ridiculous. At one point, they were telling people to go to their registration desk, and then they were like, nope, you got to go online. It was just, bad communication on top of a bad system, whatever. Anywho, let's get into it. Event had little over 1,100 players, and all 16 champions saw play on day 1. So let's get into the actual conversion rates. And representation rates, right? So Kai'sa was 33.1%, or 372 entrants. Master Yi was 14.8, or 166. Annie was 10.9, 122. Misfortune was 5.3. Teemo 5.7. Ari 5.6. Set 5.7. And every other champ or legend was less than 4%. Was 4% or less descending. So our day 2 field, this is where things get really spicy. So Kai'sa, 42.2%, or 27% of top 64, which is absolutely bonkers. So obviously we expect high representation here. It's just a good number, right? Yi, this is where things get crazy. So Yi, 17.2%. Annie, talk of the weekend, 17.2%, 11 decks. Misfortune, Wicked, more than doubled representation. 5.3 day 1, 10.9% day 2. Teemo with a respectable 4.7%, or 3 day 2. And then we had Victor, Yasuo, Darius, Lee Sin, and Volibear with 1.6%, or 1 each. What do you notice missing here? Set failing to appear at all in day 2. This deck is hard to play and has an absolutely horrible MF and E matchup, and is pretty okay at best into Annie. I'm not an Annie or Set player, but from the outside looking in, it's probably 55-45 Annie if the Set player plays 100% technically and mechanically optimal, right? You can let me know in the comments, but even if your Set specialist could not manage to convert this weekend, I don't think Set is as good as people think it is. Yes, it has a pretty good Kai'sa matchup when played perfectly, but that's it. We've entered in the era where Kai'sa is no longer the boogeyman, not that I ever thought it was. So trying to metagame a tournament composition by bringing Set just isn't correct. And so many people were on 3 Arena Bar. I just don't think that's correct. Maybe it is, I don't know. But once again, outside looking in, it doesn't sound right. I refuse to believe so. Colin with Challenger TCG could pilot a pile of bulk to top cut. That guy is so insane at card games, and he even put this deck in C tier in his own tier list. So, I don't care. That's just my assessment, right? All right. So overperformers are the big winners for the weekend. Annie, coming in hot. So a lot of the, a lot of testing groups and people on Twitter were really expecting this, myself included. Misfortune, incredible. Doubled representation from day 1 to 2. Yi, a lot of people put not much stock into this deck, right? It's a lot of people were just really undervaluing it. Teemo really held his own. Kai'Sa performed as expected, right? Represented a third. Day 2 represented 42%. Underperforming, Ari just completely fell off. Little over 5% day 1. We had nothing day 2. Set, no day 2 presence, and then obviously all of our fringe champs. We had low representation and practically no conversion, right? So we're definitely moving into a very hyper aggressive meta, and I really suspect that we're going to start seeing sideboards change, main decks change to accommodate this. We're going to start seeing the PPG lists come out very shortly, so I really expect that this is just how it's going to be. All right, now let's look at our deck list. So in first place, we have Diwali on Annie, and this is a pretty standard list. I really like this list. It's just hyper aggressive, clean, constant pressure, forces answers every turn. We have the main deck, 1 Rebuke. This card is so messed up. I love Rebuke so much. I don't know why you'd ever just not play this in purple decks, in the main deck that isn't Aurora specifically. This card is so good. It's so ridiculous. I like the 6/6 rune split. I like the battlefields. Side deck looks good. It looks like we are on 3 Merchant, 3 Scrap Heap, starting Zon Warrens every game. I do like that. It simplifies the side plan. Looks like we're on the Dravens, no Vayne. Yeah, I mean, if I play Annie, this is probably the list that I would look to play. 2 Void Seeker, yeah, no Falling Star. Otherwise, looks pretty standard. I know some people were talking about trying to move more gusts into the main for mirrors as the mirror becomes more popular. Looks like he's already on 2. Yeah, not much else to say here. Then in second place, we have Challenger TCG's Yi, Aurora Yi, with Smokescreen, which I really like. I love the Smokescreen strategies coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day, you had some Smokescreen strategies like Bujin into Fire Fist, or the inverse, whatever. This is a, pretty efficient list with the Vile Maws. I really like that, moving out of like the Sigil strategy or the Dreaming Tree strategy. Less card draw. Looks like we have Sabotage in the main. I love the good old spread 'em strategy. I am a MF enjoyer myself. 3 Sabotage, 3 Aurora in the main. What can I say? I like looking at your cards. Looks like we do have Rune Prisons in the main, so we were definitely expecting Annie here. Challenge in the main, excellent card. We do also have the Windwall in the main. One of the lose cons is definitely Time Warp. Yeah, I really like this list. You could definitely tell he just played clean all weekend and punished misplays. The only thing I don't really like is Volibear. I hate this card so much. As an MF player, it's just glued to my hand. I've got to the point of cutting it. I would just play 3 Mountain Drake personally, but what can I say? That's also why he got second place and I didn't. But that's the nature of the business. But yeah, I really like this list. All right, next we are going into Zent's top 4 Annie list. Looks like we are on Vayne main with Scrap Heaps in the side. So we are not going Zon game 1s every game. It looks like we're on 3 Void Seeker in the main and maxing out on Fight or Flight. So a bit more flexible mid-game. Still aggressive, of course, but it's not like a max aggression. So we're kind of flexing our aggression to kind of pick up some mid-game sequencing. Obviously, we're still playing Annie, so it's not like we're losing out on much, right? Yeah, otherwise, pretty standard Annie list. Triple Rebuke in the side. That card is messed up. I am a Rebuke main believer in Annie, in a little bit of testing that I've done. Yeah, that's really it. So let's move on to our next list, which is Prymor. This is another Annie list. This one is kind of similar to Diwali's. It has a Rebuke in the main. We're on 2 Gust. We're on 2 Fight or Flight. We do have a Rear Guard. We're on 2 Poro. We're on Scrap Heap in the main. We're only on 2 Flash. This one is definitely a maximum aggression, kind of a no hesitation type of build. I do like this build a lot. Our sideboard is full of one-ofs, which I am not a fan of. I do not like playing one-ofs in this game. You do draw a lot in this deck, so like it does kind of make up for it. But in a game that just doesn't really have searchers beyond like stack deck, I don't like playing one-ofs. You just don't really get to see them. But it's fine. It's still Annie. You draw a bunch of cards, you're gonna see your cards. So like, it's probably fine, right? All right, next we have George G, top 8 Kai'Sa. Now, George makes some awesome decks. He's like the Kai'Sa player, right? So this is going to be a very standard Kai'Sa list. So 3 of everything except Smokescreen, right? Looks like we're on the Vile Maws, expecting Annie, which I would expect out of someone like George. He does a lot of testing. He knows what people are going to be playing. Looks like we are also on Targon's 6/6 Rune Split, 1 Poro, 1 Rearguard. It looks like 1 Time Warp, 1 Acathian. That split is fine. Looks like we are on double Kai'Sa, triple Yordle. That card is so good. I can't believe people are cutting Yordle or moving Yordle to the side. Yordle is so good. I love drawing cards. The rest is pretty standard. Watchful Sentry. I've seen a lot of people cutting that down too, and just bringing up the Poro count. I think that is also probably okay, but like George is the Kai'Sa master, so any list that George brings to a given tournament, it's probably fine, right? Now, what is interesting is George's side deck. If you look at his side deck, it is wicked. So we have another Smokescreen, we have 2 Void Seeker, we have a Thermo Beam, we have 2 of the Volley. I can't even say that name. Bring Your Thunder Song, which says you just can't play cards, an Unchecked Power, and a Tryndamere. Once again, a whole bunch of one-ofs. Smokescreen, I don't really count as another one-of because you're playing one in the main. But a whole bunch of cards, which, like, I guess, in Kai'Sa with, like, the Dreaming Tree and Yordles, you're drawing a bunch of cards. So, like, I get it. I still don't like playing a bunch of one-ofs, but, whatever. Let's just move on. We're going to another Annie deck. We have Diego here. This one is another pretty standard list run. Triple Flash, Rebuke in the main. Looks like we have Scrap Heap in the main, standard Rune Split. This one is also on Vayne in the main, so kind of also valuing some of that mid-range or that mid-game flexibility there. Also Falling Star in the main, once again, valuing some removal there. Sideboard is pretty standard. We have moved 1 Darius from the main to the side. Yeah, not much else to comment on. Fading Memories. Worrying a bit, I guess, about Set, MF. Another Rebuke. I think that's always a 3 of. I would never not play 3 of that card. Anywho, we'll move on to our other top 8, Alanzq. Can't say his real name, so it's Alanzq. This one is another Caius. This is one of the most tuned lists of the event. Like, this is probably the list I would play. I really like this list. The Reaver's Row, excellent. Arena's Greatest. This, people just don't expect these battlefields. I think Candlelit Sanctum is also excellent. Just lets you see the cards you want to see. And he's also just playing 3 ofs of, like, all the good stuff. So, like, he's going to see his good cards, right? And if you see multiples, you mulligan them. And you're going to draw. You draw a bunch in this deck. You cycle a bunch, right? I love the way he has built this deck. It is definitely the way, like, I originally played Kai'Sa, and this is pretty similar to how I have it built. I think Smokescreen is crazy. Just -4 might is insane. Stupefy, -5 might. Hex Deck Ray, it becomes just absolutely ridiculous. Maxing out on our removal spells. No Acathian Rain in the main, which I respect. Looks like our sideboard is where we're kind of fitting in some of that. The rest is pretty standard. We're just going 3 of everything, and then we have our Watcher. Or our Time Warp, excuse me. Just one Time Warp in the main. That's fine. You're going to see it. Only thing I don't like is the fact that our Yordles are in the side deck. We've moved all 3 of our Yordles to the side deck, and we're just maxing out on the other quote-unquote 2-drops. So Yordle, Thermo Beam, Acathian Rain, Unchecked Power, and the other Time Warp, right? This is kind of what you'd expect to see in, like, a list that's just playing 3 of everything. Not much else to talk about. And then we have ClydeTCG. This is another Aurora Yi with Smokescreen, built a little different than Challenger TCGs. He is starting tempo ramp and siding into Aurora, which I like. The way you side against both of those are definitely different. So a little different. So your opponent siding cards and then you dropping Aurora can be a wicked experience. I love Pit Rookie as a card. I'm glad he's maxing those out. I would personally find a way to play more Clockwork Keepers. Like in my list, I don't play Primal Strengths, but you probably have to make concessions when you're playing the smokescreen strategy. It's what you got to do, right? But obviously he found success. The rest of the list looks like pretty standard, right? Kiana's good. All your ramp cards are good. 2 White Flame is becoming the standard. Not much else to really talk about here. I'm definitely interested to test out the smokescreen style strategy. I don't know how much I believe in it. And you have a little bit of space, so fit a Rune Prison in there for the Annie matchup, because, you're going to be seeing a lot of Annie. As for the mini vlog section of this video, covering my tournament experience and such, I had an incredible time. The drive down is pretty boring. It's 7 hours of completely straight driving where I live in Oklahoma to Houston. Quite literally straight, no exaggeration. I think a grand total of 5 turns, including turning out of my driveway and turning into the hotel parking lot. And that's not me bullshitting you. Receiving the MF promo, then going up the escalator and seeing the entrance area was absolutely wicked. Definitely brought back a lot of memories from when I used to travel a lot for Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day. The design of the venue was executed to perfection by Riot. On top of that, the space was absolutely enormous. One of my favorite parts of the venue was how accessible they made Riot staff to like everyone. They had dev panels. Riot staff was just walking around, easily identifiable and eager for conversation. It was great. Outside of the venue was great too. The weather was awesome and it was right downtown, so you were pretty close to everything too. It is Houston, to be fair, so not like anything exquisite, but let's be real, we've all been to events that are like in the middle of nowhere. Of course, met up with Zane, owner of Topdeck, my motherfucking dog, and had an absolute freaking blast.
With another box opening, we're going to be opening up that signed card right here, right now. First one. First pack. Best of luck here. God's favorite champion.
Timo.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got some awesome pictures. I got a picture with Skara. I got a picture with Bob Toad, a player from my Discord. I got a picture with Response on Play, Silencer from Response on Play. He's a friend of mine who's local to me. And of course, linked up with my boy, E3TCG Keegan. You might know him as E3 Yu-Gi-Oh!, the man responsible for RBETs. This is straight up my guy. Love him. Be sure to check out his channel. He'll be linked in the description below. As for actual tournament play, I dropped once I hit X2, as I was informed that the person I took my first loss to had dropped, so I knew even if I won out, there was absolutely no chance to get in. So I spent the rest of the day having a good time, talking to a bunch of Riot and UVS staff, jamming some games, and just vibing. We drove home Sunday night, and yeah, wrapped it up. As of now, I'll be at the CC 25K in Houston in January, the Vegas RQ in February, and the PPG in Dallas in July. Of course, I will plan to be at more events next year as well. If you want to link up, let me know. Hit me on my Twitter, link in the description, and be sure to click all the YouTube buttons. And I'll see you in the next one.